So I often find myself asking the question, what could Lego do for Bionicle's 25th anniversary? Except I don't actually find myself asking that question. I know what I would want them to do. This isn't wish casting or speculating or, just this is just for fun. I think it'd be really cool if Lego was to reintroduce or introduce McDonald's Matoran again, but not from McDonald's and not identical to these builds right here. We've gotten these once before. It's not to say you can't reintroduce them or these parts, but if they were all going to be new molds in 2024 or 25 or 26 or whenever these would be released, if ever, why not lean into the fact that they're new molds by making them new, like this fist, based on the prototype fist, of course, but I think you could have a hybrid of this fist and the classic style fist, something that's a little chunkier. Just give it an axle hole because why Lego? But also worth noting that with an axle hole, you can hold things with axles. Of course, that's obvious. But also, you could hold minifigure tools, right? So brooms or shovels or staves or what have you, right? Even make custom tools for these characters as well. Worth also noting that you could lean into kind of the silly side of these characters because oftentimes McDonald's Matoran did not exist for combat. I mean, that's what they existed for as toys, but in the story they filled professions. And this is kind of my idea for a sort of custom minifigure series, but for Bionicle specifically. So my thought is that you could get these with professions. They don't even necessarily have to have names. This could be the miner Matoran, the cleaner Matoran, I guess. You could have a musician Matoran, etc. Right? So what would be reintroductions of old parts here would be, of course, that torso identical to the previous one, the foot here identical to the previous, and in this case, the mask. The head looks identical as well, but it's actually not because in this case here, it is two pieces. It's not to say they couldn't bring back the old head. I wouldn't complain if they did, but if they have the opportunity to introduce one more new piece, and they're making new molds anyway, assuming, why not introduce an eye stalk, right, for these characters? In this case here with a little axle hole at the top, so you can connect things like this helmet here. By the way, shout out to Jam over on the Discord server. This is one of their custom pieces. You can find their parts pack in the appropriate channel on the Discord server. Don't remember what it's called right now. I think it's like 3D files or something like that. But yeah, should highly check that out, and there's some other things I'll shout out in this video. But let's go ahead and move on from that because, of course, if there's a wave 2, why not introduce a couple parts to vary between these sets? Because ultimately, when it comes to a custom minifigure series, there are often 12 figures, so why not have 12 of these Matoran to begin with anyway? And there are 12 masks from 2001. As a celebration of 25 years of Bionicle, introduce those 12 masks, give them new colors. That's fantastic, of course. But then in a wave 2, well, you've spent your budget in wave 1 for those new masks. You don't need to reintroduce them, so why not introduce new parts like this shorter version of the foot, which is a half a lift arm shorter than the previous foot type, or a half lift arm longer, or maybe the torso could be a little bit wider. You could reintroduce the classic style of handpiece if you wanted. Again, give it an axle hole, Lego. Don't. You could introduce new masks like this one here. Shout out to Galva for this design as well. Prolific designer in the Bionicle community, of course. And it's also worth noting too that there's so much variety that could come out of sets like this. Yeah, obviously this is clearly based on Oniwa. Some of these are nods to characters that already exist, but in general, it doesn't mean you have to name them. So wave 1 would basically introduce these pieces that you see on screen here, with the exception of this foot specifically, because I think that could be a wave 2 thing. The eye stalk isn't even technically necessary, but let's assume that it was here at 17 pieces for wave 1. That sounds like a lot. It's really not, even in terms of just custom minifigure series, which can often have more than that. But it's also worth noting that really new themes in general from Lego often delve into 20 or more new pieces in a wave sometimes. Bionicle was definitely not afraid to do this, with many waves even exceeding 50 new pieces, which is kind of shocking. Pieces like this, for example, a hat or a belt or a backpack or custom weapons, whatever, could be introduced in a wave 2, which would go a long way towards, again, giving us some extra life to these characters. And of course, it's not worth skimming over the fact that many of the original Bionicle colors still exist. Obviously, the old grays don't exist anymore. The old brown doesn't exist anymore. But if you wanted to even take a look, if you've never seen it before, classic brown versus reddish brown are not that different in terms of color. So even introducing masks in reddish brown, today's modern version of Mata brown, I guess, wouldn't be that far off, let's be honest. Mask colors that are swapped like this. Of this selection here, 10 of these 12 are brand new colors, with this one being a relatively rare mask as a misprint. This is the only one that'd be common, so maybe forego this mask for something like a trans black, or this one could be dark bluish gray instead of black or whatever, then they're all new colors at that point, right? Trans light blue is not the color of the misprint version of the cow that was trans medium blue, so that's a new color here as well. And you could lean into new colors, you could lean into metallics that didn't exist back in 2001, etc. And in wave 2, again, you could also introduce new masks, new accessories. Again, Jam for these accessories here, Galva for these masks. Already had them downloaded, might as well use them for the sake of the video. So ultimately, not only do I think this is a pretty good product in general, I mean, they're the McDonald's Matoran, like nobody hates them, right? But it's also worth noting that these guys, you know, even today, the market for these is kind of insane, so why not hurt the market, let's be honest. But it's also worth noting, too, that as a risk for Lego, these are not the most risky things that they could make. Very few new molds. Yes, the first wave would definitely be the most ambitious and the most expensive for them, notably having to introduce a new headpiece, an eye stalk, I would hope, new handpiece, a new torso, new foot, and 12 new masks. That's a lot. But it's not unheard of, and it's not a crazy amount for something like this. To celebrate 25 years, I don't think that that's too bad. In terms of price, I would say $5 is probably pretty good. I could expect 6 from Lego, let's be honest, but 5, they're not losing money on 5, I don't think. Sell them in the same area or very close to where you sell custom minifigures. Maybe someone will buy them. Maybe someone will remember it. Maybe they won't. They'll just be like, hey, this looks interesting. What is this? I want to play around with this thing, you know. And then, like I said, you can introduce new colors of masks or whatever, sand green how, or, you know, and then all things told, right? This is a way for Lego to kind of dip their toes into the Bionicle pool, right? See if the water's warm, if the audience is receptive to a Bionicle G3. And if it is, you know, maybe you branch out from these sets. You do something like, you could even have a nod to 2001 Bionicle in celebration of that 25 years or whatever, introducing things like Rahkshi. In this case here, just using a custom mask. It's actually a G2 mask. That one is from Red Star Games, by the way, so shout out to them here as well. But, you know, simple things like this, a very simple Rahkshi design made of pieces that only exist today, so no retired parts here, and I just broke his head, but in general, just very simple little guys. This is a bat here that I actually designed for my board game, but I think overall, there's a lot of charm in this, and so like I said, if Bionicle was to see a reintroduction, was to sell well, and remember, these are collectibles that are easily traded, that's a lot of word-of-mouth advertising right there, right? If they were to sell well, then you could do a wave of little guys like this, or you could even do these like a blind bag as well, in much the same way as these custom minifigures. So mix it up a bit, maybe have some of them be minifigures and some of them be these little Technic Rahkshi or whatever, you know, just have fun with it, play around with it. I think there's a lot of good that comes out of something like this, and ultimately, at the end of the day, it is valuable for Bionicle fans, original Bionicle fans specifically, but even if you weren't an original Bionicle fan, you have a complete Bionicle coming right out of the package, right there off store shelves, and that's pretty cool. So that's pretty much everything I want to go ahead and mention in this video. If you did want to subscribe, it does help out the channel. Of course, if you want to help out the channel in other ways, you can also check out the Patreon link down in the description below. Also, you can find Discord, which is where the parts pack is for Jam. It's also where you can find Kenny mocks and updates on some of their new stuff coming out. They've got some gunmetal legendary masks like the Evoki and the Krakan and some other masks as well. They actually have a channel dedicated to them on the server that they regularly post in. So you can find all of that there. Again, link for that is in the description. Instagram in the description as well. So anyway, I'll see you on the next one. Take care.